Today, I wish to present the topic of banknote issuance in Republican China. When the topic of banknotes issued by Republican China up till 1935 comes to mind, it is simply put confusing. This is due to the complexities of the Chinese currency system that existed in China from 1912 till 1935, which isn't helped by the existence of numerous issuing banknote authorities. To understand this complexity, we must go back to the late Qing dynasty. Officially, the currencies used were the Chinese tael and in 1889, the Qing dynasty yuan, which was issued at par with the Spanish silver dollar and worth 0.72 of a Chinese tael. To make matters more complex, this system varied on a provincial level. The tael, which was officially equal into 1,000 cash coins, was not always followed. The lack of supervision from Qing authorities meant that on a provincial level, 900 to even as low as 150 cash coins could make up a tael. Furthermore, the silver dollars issued as part of the Qing dynasty yuan had varying levels of purity, fineness, and weight, further complicating the monetary system. Aside from the lack of Qing supervision, there was also a level of provincial autonomy, which meant that what would constitute as a silver tael in a Qing dynasty yuan would not always be standard across China. This complexity is important to note as it carried itself into Republican China in 1912. The end of the Qing dynasty did not result in the end of provincial autonomy, with provincial authorities insisting they still had the right to issue currency independently, in defiance of the Republican government. In response to this, President Yuan Shikai in March of 1912 declared this to be illegal and set about reforming the currency system. This reform, which marks the first serious attempt at standardizing currency issuance in China, was the 1914 National Monetary Regulations issued by Yuan Shikai's government. As part of these regulations, it was decided that the new currency unit to be used by the whole of China would be the silver dollar. In turn, the Chinese tael, along with the cash coins, would be phased out. The specifics of the silver dollar are not clear, but it can be safe to say that it would be similar to the Qing dynasty yuan, in turn meaning that it would have been at par with other silver dollars at the time, such as for example the Spanish silver dollar. It would have also have meant that the currency name would have likely just been the yuan. As part of the reform, the former Da-Qing government bank of the Qing dynasty, which served as the de facto National Bank of China, was transformed into the Bank of China. In turn, it was planned to serve as the main issuing authority for all Chinese currency as soon as the 1914 National Monetary Regulations took effect. However, this reform would only have little to at most a moderate effect on the Chinese currency system. With Yuan Shikai's death in 1916, this created a power vacuum and led to the start of the Warlord Era in China. This would prove disastrous as to the reform, as the lack of an effective central authority in China would prevent the overseeing or regulation of it. This also meant that there was no sole banknote issuing authority in China, with the newly transformed Bank of China simply serving as simply another banknote issuing authority in China, rather than a sole national one. Despite this, it did have the effect of slowly phasing out copper cash coins and silver taels, and by spring of 1920, 380 million of these silver dollars would be minted and circulated throughout the whole of China. With the beginning of the Warlord Era, this prevented any effective progress in the currency system. Full silver dollars as per the 1914 National Monetary Regulations were still minted. The number of banknotes issued does not correlate to this, and by 1926 the number of banknotes exceeded the silver dollars issued by 2/3. This was caused heavily by the warlords that eyed for control over all of China, which eventually devolved into the warlords simply trying to keep their own territory safe. The result of this was a fragmented currency system, with warlords issuing their own money within their own territories. Provincial institutions also did issue their own banknotes, as well as nominally national banks such as the 1914 established Bank of China. Still, the currencies were still backed by the silver dollars of the 1914 regulations. However, there were significant variations in exchange rates for each kind of banknotes due to the differing levels of trust and reliability in the institutions that issued them. An example of warlord-issued currency would include the Fangtian Dollar, which circulated from 1917 to 1928. The Fangtian Dollar was introduced by the Fengtien provincial government, which was ruled by Zhang Zhuolin, and issued via the Bank of the Free Eastern Provinces. Unlike many types of warlord-issued currency in China at the time, the Fengtian Dollar was issued with care taken in mind to prevent inflation. Warlord Zhang Zhuolin ensured that it would be backed by the silver yuan standard, assumably that of the 1914 National Monetary Regulations. This gave the Fangtian Dollar an advantage despite not being convertible for silver coin, as the strict regulations established a confidence in its users. Here we can see an example of such a note, a 100 Fengtian Dollar note issued via the Bank of the Free Eastern Provinces. On the obverse, with a dark purple print and a multicolor underprint, has the depiction of the denomination of $100 in English. However, this was not to last. With increased conflict with central China, Zhang Zhuolin demanded even more resources and in turn currency to pay for his military operations. This interference led to an increased printing of the Fengtian Dollar, which when contrasted against the limited silver backing, gave rise to inflation. By June of 1928, the Fengtian Dollar had effectively lost all value. The severity of this inflation can be demonstrated via its value to the Japanese gold yen from 1917 to 1928. In 1917, the Fengtian Dollar was on par with the Japanese gold yen, but by February of 1928 had dropped to 40 Fengtian dollars to 1 Japanese gold yen, effectively making it worthless. An example of currency issued by provincial institutions would include the Provincial Bank of Guangdong Province. Though normally under the control of what can be considered the nominal government of the Republic of China due to its location in the Guangdong Province, there is good evidence that it issued banknotes independently without restriction. When recalling the 1914 National Monetary Regulations, it was decided that a silver yuan was to be used, and it can be assumed that the currency unit used would have been the yuan. In this case, the banknotes issued by the Provincial Bank of Guangdong do not follow this rule, as they are denominated in dollars. To demonstrate this would be this 1918 $1 note issued by the Provincial Bank of Guangdong Province. On the obverse, which has an overall blue print with multicolored gouache on the sides, is the depiction of the Temple of the 6 banyan trees in Guangzhou Province with denominations depicted on the sides. The reverse, which has a green print, simply bears the simple message of promising to pay the bearer on demand $1 in English. Though provincial and warlord-issued currency circulated in China, that is not to say that nationally issued banknotes did not exist at all. Keeping in mind of the 1914 National Monetary Regulations, a national bank by the name of Bank of China was to be established as the sole banknote issuing authority in China. Despite the lack of a centralized national government in China during the Warlord Era, it still existed and issued banknotes that had better faith in the Chinese people. This can be shown with this 1924 Shanghai branch Bank of China 10 yuan banknote. On the obverse, which has a blue print with a multicolor underprint, is a depiction of the seaside scene along with 10 yuan denomination in Chinese. On the reverse, which has an overall olive green print and multicolor underprint, is a monogram of the Bank of China in the center and a promise to pay the bearer on demand 10 yuan in the national currency in English. The promise to pay the bearer on demand, according to the 1914 National Monetary Regulations, would have given any of its users greater confidence in using this particular banknote. The chaotic circulation of banknotes in China would come to an end in 1935. In 1926, under the leadership of Chiang Kai-shek and the cooperation of allied warlords loyal to the nominal government of the Republic of China, a military campaign called the Northern Expedition began with the aim of unifying the northern side of China. This began with Chiang Kai-shek's troops starting out from the south and pacifying the north. It was partially successful, and by 1928, Chiang had nominally unified China and began to assert Chinese central authority, especially in areas concerning the economy. In a surprise move on the 3rd of November 1935, the 1935 currency reform was initiated. Aside from suspending the silver standard and making all banknotes in China fiat currency or 法币, it also banned all local and provincial authorities from issuing any more banknotes. As part of the reform, only the Central Bank of China, Bank of China, Bank of Communications, and Farmers Bank of China would be allowed to issue its own banknotes. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed.